Happy Pride. Okay, not when I'm filming, but if all goes according to plan when I post this, because for once in my life, I'm planning ahead on my vlogs. But Lambda Literary just put out their 2022 Lamby nominations, so I'm gonna go over the sci-fi fantasy, or I think it's speculative section while I wait for my phone to get its act together and send me the access code I need in order to get into my email. Anyway, so I've already looked at this. This isn't a surprise, but I will be reading the synopses for the books I'm not already familiar with. Which brings me to, there are 2 books on this list I'm familiar with and probably won't be reading. The first is A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martine. I read A Memory Called Empire last year and didn't love it. It wasn't terrible, but it also just wasn't that great for me. It just, something about it didn't quite click with me. So I had no intention of reading the sequel. Now, maybe I'll end up reading it because you never know. But I'm not planning at this point. The other one is the Tensorette series by Nian Yang. Their anthology version just came out this year, so it's on the list. I am very tempted to reread it. I bought the anthology. I'm a little upset that the cover isn't the same buttery texture that the individual books were, but like also I'm not too mad about it. Although I do miss having multiple gorgeous covers on my shelf instead of just the one, but I love it. So this one, maybe I'll do a reread. Maybe I'll do a reread of some of them. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. And that leaves 3 books in the speculative fiction section that I am not familiar with. So we're going to go over the synopses for these together so we can learn a little bit more about these, and hopefully I will be reading them. So the first of these is Breeder by Honey Van. I'm going to need to look up how to pronounce this name. Give me a second.
Van Rijswijk.
Van Rijswijk?
Van Rijswijk.
Okay. We're gonna go with that. So, Breeder by Honey Van Rijswijk. So this says, Will Meadows is a seemingly average 15-year-old Westie who... Sorry, Westie means dog breed to me. We'll keep reading.
Average 15-year-old Westie who lives and works in Zone F, the rundown outermost region of the corporation. In the future state of the corp, a person's value comes down to productivity. The right actions win units, the wrong ones lose them. If Will is unlucky and goes into unit debt, there's only one place to go, the Ratter. But for Zone F breeders, things are much worse. They're born into debt and they can only accrue units through reproduction. Every day in Zone F is a struggle, especially for Will, who is fighting against time for access to an illegal medical drug, Crystal 8. Under the cover of night, Will travels to the gray zone, where life is less regulated and drugs and people are exchanged for gold. There, Will meets Rob, a corrupt member of the corporation running a breeder smuggling operation. Will also meets Alex, another teen whom he quickly recognizes as a breeder in disguise. Suddenly, Will has an illicit job and money, access to Crystal, and a real friend. As the pair grows closer, Alex shares her secret. She is part of the response, an uprising to overthrow the corporation. Caught up in the new friendship, Will and Alex become careless as the two covertly travel to Zone B for a day of adventure. Nothing goes as planned, and Will's greatest fear is realized. Will his true identity be revealed?
Interesting. Not something that really falls into my realm of interest. It's definitely very dystopian, so we'll see. Next is No Gods, No Monsters by Cadwell Turnbull. Now, of all the covers, except for the Tensorette, this is the one that's most interesting to me. The captivating first novel in the Convergence saga by Cadwell Turnbull, blah, 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 blah. Okay, can we get to the actual description? One October morning,
Lena gets the news that her brother has been shot and killed by Boston cops. But what looks like a case of police brutality soon reveals something much stranger. Monsters are real, and they want everyone to know it. As creatures from myth and legend come out of the shadows seeking safety through visibility, their emergence sets off a chain of seemingly unrelated events. Members of a local werewolf pack are threatened into silence. A professor follows a missing friend's trail of breadcrumbs to a mysterious secret society. And a young boy with unique abilities seeks refuge in a pro-monster organization with secrets of its own. Meanwhile, more people start disappearing, suicides and hate crimes increase, and protests erupt globally, both for and against the monsters. At the center is a mystery no one thinks to ask. Why now? What has frightened the monsters out of the dark? The world will soon find out.
I like that one. There's something about that. I'm not sure if it's more horror or fantasy, but definitely curious about that one. And the last one is Phototaxis by Olivia Piero, which has a very boring cover, if I'm being honest. Okay, this is originally French, so that's interesting. It's translated from French. In a stadium, it's seriously overflowing with meat. Okay.
A museum is bombed. A classical piano player hooked on snuff film throws himself off a building. A charismatic but misled political organizer has disappeared, and a young immigrant navigates a crumbling continent. In the fallout of their friendship, Olivia Tapiro's phototaxis deploys a fugal language at turns surreal, scathingly comic, poetic, and revolutionary to dismantle our world and construct one even closer to its breaking point, or further along in its breaking. Here, voice and events surge up like a reflex from the exhausted throats of nature and urban spaces, sounding out an architecture of failure within a suspiciously steady rise of fascism and its persistent counterpoints. Dystopic work of hope that carries its own disintegration, Phototaxis, translated by Kit Schulter, is Tapiro's first novel to appear in English.
Interesting. I gotta be honest, none of these three are super appealing to me, but I'm gonna give it a shot. I will read the ones I can get. That's always kind of the limiting factor on these kind of vlogs, is how many of the books I can get. As long as I can get at least one, I will do a vlog on it, even if it's reading one other book and then rereading Tensorate. But we will see. And I think I might do a separate vlog of me reading some of the other books on the list, because just skimming through the titles and covers, there were some interesting ones in there. So maybe I'll read some contemporaries or some non-speculative books for this. We'll see. All right. See you when I get a book. All right. Coming home from my library, I got Breeders, so this will be the first book I read. My library only had Gods and Monsters that I could borrow, and that is still on hold. So I did interlibrary loan, but they don't do anything that is within a year of its publishing date. So I couldn't get Phototaxis. So I'm going to start with Breeder. I have Gods and Monsters on hold. And then I put on interlibrary loan the two books from last year I didn't get to read. The Something of the Wilting Skin and Everyone on the Moon is Essential Personnel. Those are on ILL. Hopefully I will get them. But first up, Breeder. I'll let you know my thoughts when I'm about halfway through. Halfway through Breeder. So this is honestly a very typical YA dystopian, in my opinion. It takes place in what is modern day Australia, but it's like in the future after a huge environmental collapse. So like everything is, terrible. And the ocean's on fire and things. And this city is divided into zones, and like in the center you have zone A, which is like a dome that filters out the air, and it's paradise in there. And then as you go further out, it gets less good. And then the final one is zone F, which is terrible, which is of course where our main characters are, because they always have to be in the worst one. And then there's a big wall surrounding the entire city that keeps out like the bad, terrible environmental stuff, but also the Westies, which are people that live outside of this zone in the like hellscape that is Western Australia. I don't know enough about Australia to be making these statements. And the main thing with this world, one, how much money you spend and how much you earn is tracked. You like are born in debt because it's hard to, fertility rates are very low. And so you're born in debt to the society for helping you be born. And then you work your whole life trying to get out of debt. And like if at any point your projected like pay doesn't meet that and they think you aren't going to be able to pay off your debt before you die, you get sent to the Raider, which is of course short for incinerator, because by dystopian you have to abbreviate words for no reason. And so you kind of spend your whole life working to try to earn money to pay off the debt. The others, if you're a boy, females, born female, if you're born female, however, you are labeled a breeder, which means you're basically an incubator for children later. You get marked with a scar. Your parents can sell you at any point to just like make a ton of money. And then you start working off your debt. Now breeders are started deeper in debt. And they work off their debt by having children. And the other way a breeder's debt can get taken care of is another person can pay the remainder of a breeder's debt, and they leave the, what do they call it? remember what it's called, and become a shadow, and then they tattoo over your scar, and you're allowed to like work like a normal person in society. So that's the world we're in. The main character is Will. I don't want to use the... Will was born with a female body, but like was raised as a man, and is currently like he's taking hormones to suppress his female puberty transition, and he's just working his life. And one of the things he does, which isn't legal, is that he is a runner, which means they go out of the wall and to the Westies, and they try to, essentially they kidnap girls to bring them back to be breeders. This is one of the things he does in order to make money. And while he's doing this, he meets a young woman. He meets this woman who has the breeder scar, but without the shadow tattoo over it, so she's clearly been broken out. And it kind of like makes him, he's always felt like pretty bad doing what he does, but like he needs to because it's the only way he can get his drugs. They call it crystal, which I think is like a hormone blocker. It's never really ever explained exactly what it is, but crystal. It's the only way he can get it. So he feels really bad about it, but it's also like he needs to do it, and that's kind of what it is. Concept-wise, it's okay. It feels very YA dystopian with a little bit more LGBTQ plus on it, spin on it, like kind of leaning towards those rights, leaning towards trans rights and like trying to add that element to it. I do think of all the things in YA dystopian, the like forced breeding is always my least favorite part, but generally it's in the background. Here it's brought a little bit more to the forefront, and it's gross and I hate it. But I think like your concern or how much you care is not really, for me anyway, I'm not getting it through the book itself. It's just like the idea of this abstractly is very upsetting to me. But like the book itself isn't really making me feel upset about it. And I think it's the writing style. It's just very, very straightforward. Very, here are the facts. Sometimes if you're like, here's how Will feels about these facts. But you don't really get there's not a lot of tension. Like all of your tension in the story is supposed to be coming from you're worried about Will getting caught, but it never actually seems like he's gonna get caught. He sees bad things happening, but it's so coldly presented that I don't really feel anything other than like, oh, that's bad, but like it's so obviously bad. So like the fact that Will never really buys into the system, it's more of a survival thing, but it never quite feels right. And Alex, the girl he meets, like is clearly against. It's very much, you know, the Lego movie. It's very typical average boy protagonist who buys into the system, or at least goes along with the system, meets spunky girl protagonist who is anti the system and is going to teach him the error of his ways. It's kind of got that vibe to it. But like I said, the writing is very just straightforward. So I'm going to read just like this short paragraph that's very early in the book. I walk up to a clique of 4 kids that have short, spiky hair that's been bleached completely white, and they're wearing tight black jeans and bright blue runners. My heart's banging, and I'm planning to ease things by saying hello or asking them how business has been, what kinds of Grey Corps affiliates have been showing up this week. But as I get close, I change my mind. They're looking with absolute hatred at my black jeans. I'm wearing the same jeans they are, which means I'm treading on their turf. The kid closest to me, who has a tattoo of a silver gun on his forehead, meets my gaze and says, "Take off your mask and keep your eyes down." So it's very straightforward. And I was kind of wondering if maybe this was like something written in translation, and maybe there was a translational thing happening, and that's why it was so straightforward, but it's not. I mean, she's Australian. So it's just a little bland. And so given that it's very generic storyline, I need something from the writing to make me more interested in it than I would be for just a generic storyline. And right now it's not giving me that. I'm gonna finish it. I'll give you my final thoughts when I finish, but right now, not loving it. All right, I finished Breeder last night. There has been no good time to update you. I am exhausted. This week has been absolute hell, but I'm going on a trip this weekend, so I won't be able to update you at all if I don't do it now. So, quick thoughts on the ending, or the rest of this book. Let me shift so you can see the book. I definitely liked the second half a lot more than the first. I actually like the third quarter of it the most. Obviously, without spoilers, I can't talk about the specific section, but like, if you're familiar with classic dystopians, so thinking more Brave New World, 1984, you can probably guess some of the like storyline that's going to happen here, because this does really end up modeling or mimicking a lot of classic dystopians, and I definitely like that part of it more. One thing, the writing definitely improved, and I'm a little torn about it because I can't tell if it's intentional. So what it looked like to me, the writing improved at a certain point, and very specifically there starts being flashbacks, and anytime there's a flashback, those are written in the simplistic writing style that the beginning of the book was written in. And so it feels like it was done intentionally, and towards the end we there's moments it kind of goes back to that simplistic style and it gets complex. And the way it read to me, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, is that the writing style changed to reflect Will's mental state a little bit. Or not mental state, his buy-in to, I don't know if buy-in is the right word, his acceptance of, also not the right word, how much he was feeding into or buying into or cooperating with the corp. So flashbacks, or the beginning when he's like more actively working with the corp, then those are times when the writing style is simple because he is brainwashed. I mean, like, he's never completely unaware of the harms, but like at times where he is starting to fight back or is considering the harms or that kind of thing, the writing style gets more complex. So I actually think that's really brilliantly done if it's intentional and not just me making it up, because it could just be I enjoyed the plot of those sections more. So I felt like it was better written just because I like the plot more. But I do think the writing style actually varies a little bit throughout it, which was really interesting to see. I think that really covers it. The ending, there's some stuff with the ending I thought was good. I had some idea of what the ending might be like. I didn't know what the ending would actually be, but like tonally, plot-wise, I had an idea of what the ending would end up being. And it doesn't exactly do what I was expecting, but it is in the vein of what I expected based on what I know of classic dystopians. So I think, I don't know, I still kind of feel like this could have been a short story. Honestly, I think it would have been really good as a novella. I think if the author had cut out like 100 pages and really focused in on that time in the middle, towards the middle to the end, it would have been much better. I think you need some of the beginning to kind of show you what life was like before and give you some reason to root for Will, but I definitely think that section the first 100 pages could have been cut down to like 20 and then had the rest. And I would have liked it a lot more. I haven't done my rating for this and I've already shut my computer down for the night. I'm guessing it'll be about a 3.5. If I had to guess. But I don't know what's up next. I know one of my holds is in at the library, but I don't know which one. But I'm not sure what I'm going to be reading next, but we'll see when I get it. Alright, I have a little bit of a dilemma. Not much of a dilemma because I think I've already solved it, but I'm going to tell you anyway. My hold for The Silence of the Wilting Skin came in, and I was like, oh, well, what if I just read this in like a day? Because it is super short. I mean, that's less than 100, literally less than 100 pages. But I never got around to it because I'm really trying to finish a different book. And while I was waiting, trying to get through that, my hold for the audiobook of No Gods, No Monsters came in. So, dilemma. I do think I'm going to go with the audiobook now. Mostly because I just finished reading the first series of the Warriors Cats books. Check out those videos. Those videos will be up before this one because those are hopefully coming out in May. Anyway, and I kind of want to take a break before jumping into the next series. So this will wait a little bit, although I really kind of want to get into it. Although I reread the back of it. I don't know if it was about what I thought it was about. So in the meantime, we're going to do the audiobook of No Gods, No Monsters. I'll let you know when I'm about halfway through. Okay. All right. No Gods, No Monsters. I'm only about a third of the way through, not halfway through, but I wanted to film this because I'm about to go to bed and I read a lot before bed and I didn't want to get too far ahead of past halfway without updating. Figured earlier was better than later. I don't really have a lot of thoughts though, unfortunately. This is weird. It's almost more like a series of short stories, but told chronologically. So it starts out with this girl or woman whose brother has recently been shot by, I think, a cop. And it brings up some repressed memories for her. But it also, as she kind of starts looking into it, it ends up bringing to light something that kind of changes a lot about the world. And then, like, the next story kind of takes over from there with, like, a certain person reacting to that change. And it goes from there. And it's interesting. I like that as a format. I think it's really, really interesting. But that's really all I have to say about it. I don't have a lot of thoughts. Like, I can't get attached to the characters because you don't really get to know the characters. And there isn't really a plot because, like, each story has its own kind of plot going into it. So it's just very odd, and it's a very hard thing to, like, get a grasp on because I don't really know how I'm supposed to be consuming this, if that makes sense. I almost feel like the way I read isn't made for this kind of story, this kind of book. But the stories, like, kind of individually, if we treat it like short stories, they're not bad. So it's weird. It's very odd, is what I will say. See, this is the problem with updating before I'm actually to halfway. Literally, as soon as I started reading again, it all started to be interconnected. Anyway, now I'm past the halfway mark, and I'm loving it a lot more now that the story is coming together. Like, not that I was disliking it before. I thought it was interesting before, but, like, I didn't really get it. And now I'm starting to get it. I still don't feel like there's really a plot. And I still feel like there's too many characters. Stories are generally either plot-driven or character-driven. This is a case where I'm not really sure it's either, because if it was plot-driven, surely there'd be more coherent story. And if it was character-driven, surely there'd be either fewer characters or they'd each be getting more time. I mean, we are getting to know some of them better. I really like Ridley, whose perspective I'm reading from right now. But, like, yeah, it's just kind of incoherent. But I'm still really liking it. I think disjointed is still the word I would use for it. I totally also forgot to mention in the last clip, because it had been a while since I had seen it, but there's this random, like, first-person point of view. They're not really a character in the story. There's just every once in a while it says, I did this, or I saw this, and it's, like, almost like an observer. I have no idea who that is, but it's so fascinating. It's, like, a really interesting thing to draw you through the story. Except it's not coming up quite often enough to serve that purpose, if that makes sense. But I just wanted to quickly, that wasn't very quick, but quickly update on that so that, I could correct myself. I'm going to finish this, though, and get back to you. I have finished No Gods, No Monsters, and the honest to goodness truth, and this is going to sound like a cop-out, but I swear to you it's the truth, is that I just don't have the headspace to process this book. This week has just been a lot for me. I'm in my, like, last week of my master's program, so there's, like, a lot of work I'm doing to finish that up. It's testing season at work, so there's a lot of stress and, like, prepping my kids for tests. And it's just been a lot. And I don't have the brain space left to really deal with what this book was, because I really think this book was brilliant. Like, what is like rattling around in here is that like there was a lot going on that was really, really just intelligent, geniusly done, and I can't process it to come to terms with any sort of full idea, to the point where I don't think I'm gonna rate this book on Storygraph, because I don't think I'm in the right headspace to give it what it deserves. I also think this is a book I want to reread physically, because while I do process audiobooks fairly well, things do get lost a little bit, and even though I was listening very slowly to this one, I think that happened a little bit. I want to reread this one, but for now, it didn't click in my head. And that's not to say it wasn't good. Like, I still enjoyed reading it. I ended up really connecting with some of the characters. I like what they did with that first person. I like kind of not really a twist. I wouldn't call it a twist end, but like what happens at the end, and like some of the pieces that come together, the way like all the puzzle fits. I really do like that. I just think this book deserves more. It just deserves more for me than what I can do right now. So with that in mind, I'm gonna reread this. I'm not gonna rate it right now. I'm not gonna reread it right now. I'm gonna reread it like sometime when my head is like, can focus on it, and I'm gonna, get the physical book. But I do think this was really good, and I really do recommend it. I think I've read a lot of books that I feel like you could connect this to. The one that comes to mind most immediately is The Library at Mount Char, which I didn't like as much as I liked this one. Like, if I'm just giving like vibes, how I felt, this is like a 4.5. But like, does it deserve more than that? Or if I think about it, is it gonna deserve, like, I can't process it. But I think, yeah, maybe Library at Mount Char would be a good kind of comparison. I like this one a lot more, to be fair, but I think that might be something to compare it to. Trying to think if I've ever read anything else that has that kind of ensemble, like come together pieces like that. A little bit Black, no, I don't think Black Sun's quite the right one. Yeah, I don't think I've ever really read anything quite like this to be able to compare it fully. But I do recommend it, especially if you like something a little bit weirder. Like, this is a Books and Lala kind of book, I think. I feel like she would enjoy this, and people that tend to have similar taste to her would enjoy it. That's what I have to say. It really is trying to say a lot. Like, there's definitely a lot of commentary about prejudice and oppression and things like that I just am not in the headspace to unpack, but it definitely deserves that attention. I think this was brilliant. I'm going to read The Silence of the Wilting Skin next. This shouldn't take me a day. Maybe I'll just sit Sunday and spend Sunday reading. Maybe I'll read it tonight during my D&D game. That's next on this. This is from last year's. No, let me stop crumbling that. This was from last year's Lambys. And it says, from an exciting new voice in speculative fiction to, I'll have to look up how to pronounce their name, weaves together a story of identity and family, of love and loss, in the dead.
In an African city, a nameless young woman living in the ward slowly begins to lose her identity. Her skin color is peeling off. People are becoming invisible. The city plans to destroy the train where they bury their dead. In the wards, the dream-skin people walk the land. Predict the citizen's death. As the narrator is given a warning by her grandmother's dream skin, things begin to fall apart. Struggling to hold on to a fluctuating reality, she prescribes herself insomnia in a desperate attempt to save her family.
This sounds fascinating. It sounds like there is a lot going on for this tiny book. But I will read this soon and get you my thoughts on this one. I have finished The Silence of the Wilting Skin. And I don't have anything really, I don't know what to say about this. It's very weird. So let me flip to the back for you so you can see the image. All right, so the way that this takes place in this like city that has been divided, and on the east side they get the sun. The sun rises and sets on the east, and the west side, that's on the other side. This one is they get the moon. The moon rises and sets on the west. and there's this train that divides them, except the people in the West can't see the train. And there's a lot of stuff like culturally about like what's different between them, but our main character in this, none of the characters are named, by the way, but the main character in this lives in the East, and they have like all these cultural things, and the important thing is this train, which is where their dead go. And they have to like spend money to take care of their dead and things like that. And there's just a lot happening in this, and I only have 5 minutes to talk, which is probably good because otherwise I'm going to be saying a lot of nonsense because I really don't know what. I don't know what. This book is trying to say a lot, and I feel like I didn't get any of it. There's a lot punched into this 95 pages. Oh no, it's gonna die. I'll tell you my thoughts in the morning. Okay. Actual thoughts now that I've talked about the books about the Silence of the Wilting Skin. Honestly, the short version of it is there is about 1,000,001 things going on in the very short version is that there is like a lot going on in this book, and not just in terms of like the plot or, you know, things like that, but there's a lot of metaphor happening, and there is a lot of messages, I think, or interpretations maybe, of this work, and it's just a lot. And I feel like there are some things I'm picking up on, some things I'm definitely not, and some things maybe I'm seeing that aren't intended to be seen. The first big one is that, for me, some of the early themes I picked up on were about, I'll use the word assimilation, I don't know if that's really the right one, or conformity. Specifically, the pressure of non-white or non-Western peoples to conform to Western ideals, both in terms of like cultural and philosophical whatever, but also in terms of like beauty. So like there's the whole part about like them taking these things to relax their hair, like was one of the things that gets brought up specifically. Things like that. So that was one of the big themes I picked up on pretty early. Also, to me, what read as gentrification, but I also think may have been intended to be colonialism or something therein. I think there are themes about that. It's just a lot. There is a lot going on, and it's a lot to unpack in a way that I almost wish I'd buddy read this or read this in a book club so I could hear everybody else talk about it, because I'm not good at reading and interpreting texts. It's just sometimes, every once in a while, something sticks out to me, an allegory, but I'm definitely somebody that needs things spelled out for me a lot more than this book was doing. So like this is something I really wish I could have had somebody else telling me what they got out of it, because I feel like there's so much there and I just didn't get all I could have gotten. My hair is just doing things today. So that's kind of my overall review of it. I mean, it's more character than plot driven, but it's not really either. I really liked the interesting stylistic, well, it's not really a stylistic choice. It's almost like a world building choice to not have the characters have explicit names. And that's something, you know, it plays with like identity and intent and who matters, right? Because how much can a person matter if they don't have a name? And I think that was really interesting. And it was just really, really fascinating overall. I think I didn't enjoy reading it. I don't think I'd say that's the right word, but I do like the idea of it, if that makes sense. I would be curious to check out if, I never did see how to pronounce their name, but I would be interesting to see if they have any other books, because the writing style was interesting enough to me to be curious about it, but like also is clearly like just something that like, I think it's a little too surrealist for me, just a little bit past my comfort zone. So I'm gonna end this here. I do want to read Everyone on the Moon is Essential Personnel, but I'm just not gonna get to it in time for this. I'd love to read the other one nominee for this year, but like it's not likely to happen just because I don't know how to get a hold of the book right now. So with that, let's wrap this up. Oh, I have a tab. Yeah. So first for this month, I read... Oh, Breeder was the first one I read. Okay, first for this month I read Breeder by Honey van Ryswyk, which is a dystopian. I kind of liked it. I think I was maybe giving the author too much credit. The more I sit on it, the more like the things I saw that were happening, the more I'm not entirely sure they were happening. But I think it's good. Then I read No Gods, No Monsters, which I enjoyed, but I have no idea what happened in it, and I promise I'm going to reread it. And then I read The Silence of the Wilting Skin. Honestly, so this was from last year, but of the books in contention for this year, and I guess I could grab Tensorite, which I did not reread because I had too much going on for that, but the Tensorite. Of the books nominated this year, I think it's probably gonna go to A Desolation of Peace, but I'm just not sure. I don't really know what the Lambys are looking for, so it's hard for me to predict. I think if you're going for wide appeal, it's gonna be A Desolation of Peace. I think if you're going for like quote unquote literary merit, I think it would be of what I am familiar with, No Gods, No Monsters, but like I don't know what they look for. If it's looking for like queer themes specifically, maybe Tensorite and maybe Breeder, but I don't really know. Knowing my luck, it's gonna be Phototaxis because I couldn't read it, but maybe next year. All right, that's it for me. I fully intend to do this series every year, so you can just tell me below what some of your favorite queer SFF books are, speculative books are, so I can pick some more up, because I really do like books similar to this, no, not so much The Silence of the Wilting Skin, but things like The Tensorite or even Breeder, where it's not about characters being queer, it's about characters who happen to be queer. So if you have some more SFF, speculative, sci-fi, fantasy, horror recommendations, leave them below, and like the video if you liked it, and that's it. Love y'all. Bye. You know, I read the books ahead of time, and editing just takes a long time. So the Lamby 2022 winners have come out, and I'm just gonna quickly see who won. Speculate, No Gods, No Monsters. Is that what I said? I don't remember my prediction at this point, but not surprised, and I'm pleased. I'll reread it. It deserves better, but congrats to Cadwell Turnbull, I guess. Bye.